Well, I'm hitched. My bride has taken my name, as Welch is ahead of hers alphabetically, so that gives her a bit of an edge at the DMV. Suck it, Wilcox. It was a nice ceremony, lots of purple, Brian May guitar solos, and ray guns galore. I was wiped out as you can expect, but I am mostly recovered. As much as I love nuptials, I also love keeping my schedule. So this week on Welcome to Mystara, we are taking a look at one of the least focused on areas, the Heldan Freeholds, the biggest nation in the known world without a book of its own. I'm Mr. Welch, and we're going to the land of the tundra farmers before War Rocket Ajax gets here. While you were waiting on Saturday for a video, the day of my mother's oldest son's wedding, you could have checked out Game Shop's basement for tips on how to run games professionally, even in the frozen north. They have classes on how to stream your games, as well as open games to watch and learn. If you want to improve your streams or your online games, or just learn to be a better DM, check them out. Links in the description. Heading to the Freeholds, you will find the north of Vestland, making them the northern reaches. The people there are related to the Antillians, once being part of their culture before outside influences separated them. They're not a formal nation, they're more of a collection of homesteads that share a culture. They generally want to be left alone by outsiders and to live as subsistence farmers or ranchers. Of course, leaving them alone is the last thing a large number of groups want to do. There is not a lot of published information on the Heldan people. There was supposed to be. They were getting their own book apparently, but the line was canceled before we got to visit lovely scenic Freiburg. So what little there was of Heldan was cribbed from various sources and talked about in the post-1010 timeline metaplot, where they constantly got their teeth kicked in by the Heldannic Knights. Since there was so little official to talk about, you have to head over to the vaults of Pandius and find fan works willing to fill in the gaps. Specifically the Heldannic Knights Gazetteer by JTR and Colin Wilson. The Heldan Freeholds are similar in culture to that of Iceland, home of many simple folk with huge Nordic names like Stefan Karl Stephenson, Half-Thor Julius Bjornsson, Bjork, and Bobby Fischer. Here they build various homesteads like Stromberg, Klagen, and Altendorf. The Gazetteer renames a huge number of the towns to more Germanic-sounding names because the Icelandic language is one of the most difficult languages in the world. Still, making your players pronounce Haja Fia Tial Il Koltel is one of the best things in D&D. Wow, I actually nailed that on the first try. The history of the Freeholds is one of constant struggle. Their number one import seems to be invaders. When the Antillian people were a single tribe thousands of years ago, the orc warlord Lork decided he wanted to rule and promptly conquered the Freeholds, as well as the northern reaches. When he finally left, the Freeholds didn't organize into a nation like Ostland did, instead remaining mostly homesteads across their lands. Then came the Nithians, the Thaiatians, the Ethengarians, and finally the Heldannic Order conquered them, creating a staging point for the invasion of nearby regions. These guys just couldn't catch a break. In terms of square mileage, the Freeholds are huge, stretching from the Sea of Dawn in the east all the way to bordering the northern edge of Glantry. They occupy all the land from Vestland to Norwald as well. However, the land is sparsely populated, having one of the lowest population densities in Mystara. Because of the brutal winters, the growing season is small and the soil is typically poor, restricting where the Freeholders can set up their farms. The Freeholds are often dozens or even hundreds of miles apart, with small villages only connected by various trading posts set up between them. The lack of a dense population is the bane of the Heldannic people. They've been invaded and conquered more than anyone else on the continent, but the region itself is too large to completely overrun. After the orc warlord left, large numbers of humanoids remained in his place. Then they were driven out by the Ostlanders, who were proceeded to be conquered by the Nithians. After the Nithians disappeared, the Ethengarians decided to start invading, until they left for various reasons. Then the Thaiatians came up and invaded on their way to Norwald. After the Thaiatians were defeated, finally the Heldannic Knights took over and invaded successfully. It's like a Carousel of Conquerors. The problem with the land is it's sparsely populated. It's not mineral rich, and there's little to offer an invading force. Occupying the region is difficult because of the long supply lines required. There's not an army in the world that wants to winter over in the Heldannic tundra. The Freeholds only have one city of any significant population, and that is the port city of Freiburg. Before the Heldannic Order invaded, it was known as Heldesval, a large collection of wooden buildings and a port for trade. The knights quickly conquered the city and fortified it. The wooden palisades were torn down and walls of stone were erected. Siege weapons lined the walls, and the knights stand ready to repulse any attack. While the official headquarters of the Heldannic Order is still officially in Hadius, the bulk of their leadership resides in Freiburg. Despite the large contingent of knights, the city does not act like it's occupied. Freeholders just want to be left alone, and the knights quickly realized that if they let the locals go about their business, there wasn't any pushback. Most of the population are either fishermen or working in the shipbuilding industry, with a massive fishing fleet centered around the town. The city is located on a river rather than the actual bay, which gives their fleet some shelter during the frequent storms that plague the region. There's little of value in the area unless you count food, but the Heldannic Knights invaded for religious reasons rather than a desire for material goods. Freeholders hold Frey and Freya as their patron immortals. They aren't adamant about it, but the two immortals did originate from their region. They follow a mixed bag of northern immortals, as well as aspects of Ordana and Proteus. Religion among the Freeholders is a private affair. They aren't ones to build large temples in worship of their pantheon. A small nook in their home is enough of an altar for them. The Heldannic Order allows the worship of the Freeholders to continue. Since they don't have a centralized church, it was almost impossible to force the worship of Vanya on them. The Heldannic Order was given a quest by their patron immortal Vanya to conquer the Freeholds. Vanya believes war is the only way to further civilization. If a nation does not fight, it becomes stagnant. To her, it is important that not only does a nation need to wage war on occasion, but also to be attacked as well. Being on the offense and defense inspires nations to innovate or be conquered and assimilated into a superior culture. She felt her knights needed to spread her belief to the Freeholds, and use that region to further spread her philosophy to Norwald. The knights were more than happy to oblige. The Order, during their invasion, found a cave known as Vanya's Rest, where they discovered the pristine mortal body of the Immortal herself. This became their most sacred relic, and constructed the mighty fortress, also known as Vanya's Rest, directly above it. While the Order makes its official capital Freiburg, the bulk of their military forces are quartered out of the fortress. The knights are mustered here, and when an attack is called on, this is where they will ride from. The fortress is considered unassailable because of its location, as well as the military strength of the Order. The knights have yet to conquer all of the Freeholds, but are rapidly making progress. Their airships have made reaching the furthest parts of the region easier, and the small towns offer little in the way of defense. However, there is growing resistance in the more distant regions, as Freeholders unwilling to submit to the Order of the Knights have taken up arms. They ambush Heldannic patrols, sabotage supply caches, and when they can, lure fierce creatures into the camps of the knights. While these tactics are a little more than just annoying for the knights, the resistance fighters have to be stamped out before their cause can attract support. But the knights aren't used to fighting in the wilderness, and the Freeholders know every nook and cave in the area. More than one Heldannic airship has been destroyed when it flew into a dragon's territories following the resistance fighters. The creatures of the Heldannic Freeholds are a mixed lot of Arctic and subarctic species. Regular animals such as bears, reindeer, muskox, and other smaller mammals can be found in abundance. Dragons and giants are an uncommon sight near the northern mountains, living off the large herd of game animals found in the land. Humanoids are a constant menace, with many of the descendants of the warlord Lork's horde remaining. Trolls are quite numerous and are considered one of the biggest threats in the region. The waters of the Freeholds are teeming with life, making fishing the biggest source of food in the area. Whales are especially common, so much that Proteus is a patron immortal of the region in the form of the spooming Nuga. The Fae have a large presence as well, with huge numbers of Nixies, Selkies, and even a few of the rare Halaleskas found in the Freehold's borders. The Heldannic Order has numerous enemies and no friends. This is represented by the large number of adventurers and mercenaries assisting the Freeholders militarily or economically. In Thyatis, the Order is viewed, rather accurately, as a dangerous wild card that exists only to cause trouble. Emperor Thincaw was more than happy to sell the knights the boats they used to invade the Freeholds, hoping they find a new home or a glorious death. He wasn't picky. The Freeholders are assisted by large numbers of Ostlanders, Vestlanders, and Solderfjorders, angered by the invasion. They might be distant cousins of the Freeholders, but they're still family. Alphatia sees the knights as a direct threat to Norwald, and provides magical assistance when they can get away with it. The knights are still Thaetian citizens, even if they are estranged, and both empires are not willing to go to war over such a desolate region with the Heldannic Freeholds. Still, Alphatian suspicions aren't wrong. The knights do plan a full invasion of Norwald once the Freeholds are secure. The Freeholds are an occupied land filled with as much adventure as the players want. The Heldannic Order represents a clear threat to surrounding areas, even drawing the attention of Moglai Khan of Ethengar when they get too close. They are well armed, highly competent, and even possess a method of creating magical airships on scale with the Alphatians. Their entire premise is that through war they will grow stronger, and so will those they defeat. They are religious fanatics, but they're not stupid ones. War is their life, but they're not mindless berserkers without regard to their safety. They fight in formations, employ a variety of weapons and tactics, and possess magical support. They play a long game. Victory is their goal. They know they aren't going to win every battle, but for them the point is to win every war. If the players want to save the Freeholds, they're going to have a hard time doing so. This is going to be an entire campaign, as the knights are dug in and the Freeholds are too scattered to mount an organized resistance. Even the Freeholders fighting against the knights are organized in loose pockets across the region. Still, there is outside support for them, and more than one airship has been brought down by magic supplied by the Alphatian Empire. Warriors from the northern reaches have a common foe to strike at, one that provides them all with the glory that can be taken in battle. More than one town held by the knights have cheered when they saw the longboats of their cousin emerge from their fog, at least until the knights returned. Next week, I'm looking at a topic that surprisingly had a lot of source material, and that is the horses of Mystara. From the thundering giants of the north to the thoroughbreds of Yalaran to quite a few monstrous variants, it's time to sound the charge. But until next week, try the Sveal.